Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to the UU Church of Tullahoma. Thank you for joining us this morning, those in person, on Zoom or on YouTube. Ricky, thank you for lighting the chalice. 447. At times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has come to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us, and that's Albert Schweitzer. And announcements. I'll go do some that I've got. If you'd like to donate to our church, please make check payable to UU Church of Tullahoma. You can send it to our treasurer, Karen Price, at P.O. Box 331 Tullahoma 37388. Or if you're here in person, right behind Larry, there is a shaker box. You can put your check or cash there. Next week's speaker is going to be Wayne Steele. He is also running for Congress against Scott Desjardins, and his talk is going to be from Southern Baptist to Universalists. That ought to be pretty interesting. Let's see. PFLAG, believe it meets the second Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. We have Zen every Wednesday at 6 p.m. If you want to join, talk with Doug, and he will, there is a little 15 minute, you'll need to show up about 15 minutes early so he can kind of go over the routine with you. We will be having a retreat in November, and I keep forgetting the date. Is it November 5th? It's November 5th. And I've kind of got some ideas for it. I want to thank Patty Holland, Rosanna, what is your last name, Rosanna? Olson. I should know that. Yeah, I should know that. Rosanna Olson, and Karen, and somebody else. Lynn Webster, but somebody else texted or emailed me. And anyway, it's coming together. So that looks like it's going to be a go. I'm still looking for speakers. I need speakers, let's see, October 16th, and all of November is empty. So I've asked somebody for October 16th. I don't know. I haven't heard from that person yet. As far as, we also will be having the rededication of the 60 years of this building on December 11th. And Carrie Hawk had a great idea. They're going to go through photos taking of, different events in the church. And so if you have any photos that maybe you've taken of the church, she's bringing them to the retreat, and I think that would be great to have a table with all the photos on our, desk or table out there for the rededication. Let's see. Any more announcements? Katie?
The board is still in need of a treasurer, because right now Karen is filling the role of both president and treasurer until someone steps up. So please, someone step up, take a little weight off of Karen's shoulders. And also, if anyone's interested in learning how to run the computer for Zoom and the live stream and everything, just get in touch with me, and I'm more than willing to teach you.
Yep, next time I'm here and I'm not up here, I will be with you, I promise. Who else?
Those of are interested in doing a writing event or once a month, and it's just serious. It doesn't have to be poetry. It doesn't have to be short stories. It could be limericks, whatever you like. Even John Gray does one. It's a reverse sort of limerick sort of thing. So he's got those. Anyway, it's not a haiku. It's a loku. That's what he calls them. So anything goes. but we'll be meeting once a month, and the first time we're going to kick off is on the 8th. We'll meet here, but we could meet other places, so
Is that September 8th?
September 8th, 6 o'clock, that's a Thursday.
On a Thursday,
Yeah,
okay.
right.
Any other announcements? Gene?
With regard to that speaker next week, I'm sorry, forgive me, guys. My cough, it's not me, it's my phone. That wasn't my announcement. Becoming a Unitarian after being a Southern Baptist, it can be done. It's a tough journey. You have to first refute one and then try to figure out where the hell you're going before you get to be a Unitarian, to find out what you really are. So, all you Baptists, it can't be done.
Any other announcements from YouTube?
No one on Zoom has their hand up.
I mean, yeah, Zoom. I'm sorry. Let's see. Okay, our responsive reading is 442. We bid you welcome. We bid you welcome who come with weary spirits seeking rest.
Who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid.
We bid you welcome who come with hope in your heart.
Who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous.
We bid you welcome who are seekers of a new faith.
Who come to probe and explore, who come to learn.
We bid you welcome who enter this hall as a homecoming.
We have found here room for your spirit, who find in this people a family.
Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey.
We bid you welcome.
And that is Richard Gilbert. And so now it is time, exciting time to have Doug do our talk.
We'll get this pulled down first.
Oh, yeah.
We just got used to that. It'd be nice to see people.
Hmm?
He wants to see people.
Yeah, yeah.
Denied.
You're just gonna have to look at me, Tom. Hmm?
That was the democratic process.
Can someone look at the computer and
See, you wouldn't have to do that.
Go sit in the corner, Tom. More people have complained about being distracted, so that's why we're doing it.
It goes away after a while.
We could debate this the whole morning.
We could. Why not?
We can make that a thing
on the
on.
board meeting?
Lately, I've been thinking more and more about the mindset that allows some people to embrace religious beliefs that incorporate violence and brutality into God's plan. While this obviously includes any religion that includes the torture of people in the afterlife, such as in hell, it also includes things like genocide, slavery, execution as a standard of punishment, and the oppression of any number of groups, including women, non-believers, believers of other religions, the LGBT community, people of color, and others that I haven't thought of at the moment. Why do people embrace religions that encourage and embrace violence? Why do people find this normal? Now, lest you think I exaggerate, one of our neighbors just put a sign out in his yard, and it says, God, Guns, and Country, Trump 2024. Now, how come God and guns are now said as equals in the minds of some people? Why would someone put this in their yard? Why such a emphasis on violence? Why don't people reject these things? And I think, and this is a fairly recent thought for me, I think it comes down to this phrase, at least it's not me. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and reading books recently by what would be considered very liberal, very progressive Christians. In fact, the sort of Christians that would probably be called non-Christian by the more conservative Christians. These are the sort that don't believe in hell. They really don't even think you have to be a Christian to be pleasing to God, to be loved by God. In fact, one of them was talking to his buddy on a podcast, and he went on a bit of a rant. And he was talking about hell and this idea of eternal torment. And he ended with this, and I will tone down the language to the PG version, but you'll get the drift. If you think a loving God would create sentient beings to suffer for all eternity, your theology is effed up. And his buddy laughed and said, I couldn't agree more. Now, having lived the life of a very conservative Christian years ago, I think it is fair to say that selfishness is at the root of it. You know, I wanted a religion where I knew I would go to heaven, that I could have that peace, that I would have eternal bliss. And I found one of those religions, and I embraced it wholeheartedly. True, that particular faith required that I believe others would end up in hell, but at least it's not me. Think about that. What could have possibly been more selfish? It is true that I wanted to save others. I felt that was very important. I shared the gospel to the point of being very annoying to many people, no doubt. But it took me many years to realize that my theology was effed up. It is all about me and my eternal destiny. In fact, a very common opening line for people who were doing street evangelism or door-to-door evangelism would be this statement. Have you come to the point in your personal life, as though you didn't have a personal life, have you come to the point where you know for certain that if you were to die today, you would spend eternity in heaven? That was like the leading question to get into a conversation. And that is why my particular form of Christianity was, and is still, all about me. It is this sick form of logic that allows people to say absurd and repellent things, and I'm not making this up. It was better for the people in Africa to have been kidnapped and brought over to the United States as slaves, because at least then they could hear the gospel and go to heaven. If they had stayed in Africa, they never would have heard the gospel and they'd go to hell. People believe that. People talk about that today. It's not just something I made up. Because after all, your eternal destiny is far more important than what happens to you on this earth. Better to be a slave on earth and then free in heaven than to be free on earth and a slave in hell. Stuff like that. It justifies incredible evils. Now, I must stress here that plenty of Christians don't believe any of this. They long ago rejected the concept of hell. It's not a sweeping statement, but the Christianity I participated in embraced hell wholeheartedly. Maybe one day in the future I'll talk about these radical Christians who care about everyone and don't insist they believe the same way they do. They do exist, and they are as repelled by hell and violence as I am, as we are. Now let me stress again. I was able to look at others heading to hell and say, at least it's not me. You know, I gave them the message, they rejected it, that's on them, at least it's not me. I could not, for many years, bring myself to look closely at my concept of God and say, this is effed up. I finally got there. It took about 20 years, and I'm embarrassed about it to this day. Now, many other religions have this same problem. It's not just Christianity. Lots of religions like to threaten some form of afterlife torture and punishment. Sometimes it's temporary, sometimes it's permanent. But I want to share a different type of story now, a more uplifting story. And it comes from the Buddhist tradition. And let me stress that while there may be some who take it literally, I do not. I think it's a story designed to teach a lesson. But there's undoubtedly very conservative Buddhists who think this is all literal. In Zen, not so much. I also have to stress that this story has many variations. So if you go home and look it up, you'll find many variations of this story. And this is the story of Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara was a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is a being, a human, that has finally reached that final state of enlightenment, and they're about to break free of this cycle of birth, suffering, death, rebirth, stuck in this endless cycle of suffering. They're about to pass on and break free of all that, but then a bodhisattva says, I'm not going to leave until everyone else is enlightened also. Every sentient being is saved from this cycle of suffering. Think about, if you want to use the Christian idea, someone had died, they're about to enter the pearly gates, and they say, no, wait, I'm not going to go into heaven until everyone else gets to go too. And I'm going to go back and go through the suffering and the misery on earth to help other people, rather than get my treasure right now while others are suffering. This is the exact opposite of, at least it's not me. It is exemplified by the first line in the Bodhisattva vow, which we chant in our Zen services. Beings are numberless, I vow to save them. It's much like the attitude of many military units, no one left behind. Avalokiteshvara also appears as both male and female. In my head, I've always thought of her as female, and that's how I'll tell the story. Maybe it's because of my experience of the angry male god I used to worship. At the beginning of her time as a bodhisattva, she made a vow. Should I ever become disheartened in saving sentient beings, may my body shatter into 1,000 pieces. Now this might seem extreme, but it was symbolic of her incredible compassion and determination to save all beings. Other translations include that she vowed never to rest until she had freed all sentient beings from samsara, or that cycle of suffering. She vowed not to enter nirvana until all beings have attained enlightenment. So one day, while helping beings in the higher realms, she looked down into the hells because in this cosmology, there's 6 different worlds you can live in. They're all temporary. You die and you're reborn. You might be in a different level. So there are hells. She looks down, and she's emptied these hells of beings, helping them to become enlightened, and more are flooding in, and she becomes incredibly discouraged and disheartened. In a moment of exasperation, she becomes so disheartened that, true to her vow, her body shatters. Her consciousness, however, did not give up, even though she had shattered into 1,000 pieces, and she begs the Buddhas for help. And of them all, one comes to aid her, Amitabha Buddha, who became her personal teacher. And with the Buddha's miraculous power, she attained a new form, one with 1,000 helping hands of compassion, coupled with the eyes of wisdom in each palm. And with this, she renewed her vow to save all sentient beings. And oftentimes you will see a statue of her, or him, and it's a being with many arms, and there are eyes in the palms. And this is designed to symbolize the ability to reach out and help many, many beings. Zen teacher John Deodo Lori said, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva is the hearer of the cries of the world. And one of the characteristics of her is that she manifests herself in accord with the circumstances. So she always presents herself in a form that's appropriate to what's going on. In the Bowery, she manifests as a bum. Tonight, in bar rooms across the country, she'll manifest as a drunk, or as a motorist on the highway, or as a fireman or a physician, always responding in accord with the circumstances, in a form appropriate to the circumstances. How is that? Every time there's a stranded vehicle on the side of the road and a motorist stops to help, Avalokiteshvara has manifested herself. Those characteristics of wisdom and compassion are the characteristics of all beings, all Buddhas. We all have that potential. It's just a matter of awakening it. You awaken it by realizing there's no separation between self and other. Now, I love this story myself. I think it's a beautiful and inspiring message. And there's nothing in here about, at least it's not me. Now, many people find Jesus to be this kind of an inspiration. I still can't, because there's always another side to the story, it seems. But I'm going to share one of the passages that has some elements of this, and then the but. It's the story of the sheep and the goats. And it's from Matthew 25. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, this is Jesus, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And then the king will say to those on the right, and here's the Bodhisattva part, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me." That's being a bodhisattva right there. Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, needing clothes to clothe you? When did we see you sick or in person and go to visit you?" And the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." So there's the non-separation, no separation between you and the others, between you and God. Then he will say to those on the left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels." So this is when the story gets bad. "For I was hungry and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison and you did not look after me." And they also will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger needing clothes, or sick or in prison, and did not help you?" And he will reply, "Truly I will tell you, whatever you did not do for one of these, you did not do for me." And they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. Now, I find it almost inconceivable that Jesus really told the story this way. Jesus always or often talked about mercy and forgiveness, kindness and compassion. And then to tag on this eternal torment part, that could easily have been an author, a story passed on over the years. Who knows? I don't know. It just seems really incongruent with what's going on in this story. So I know the progressives like to take that last part out. The first part's great. Whatever you do to help someone, you're doing to help God, the divinity and all, if you will. But then you've got to deal with this other passage too, or else you're just picking and choosing, which I've talked about in the past, buffet Jesus. You take the parts you like, ignore the parts you don't like. Fundamentalists, of course, have to deal with this because the entire Bible is the Word of God. And indeed, I know many Christians who simply cannot give up the notion of hell because of passages like this. Because Jesus said this. Therefore, it must be true no matter how horrible it sounds. And they can't accept the notion that, well, maybe those words are human words tacked on, trying to add more force to the message or something. And so they have to believe that hell is real. And it drives this crazy incongruence in your head of a God of mercy, a God of love, a God of compassion, a God who tortures people. And then a lot of people end up like me, throwing it all away. I cannot believe this anymore. There may be some good in there somewhere, but how do I know? And, if Jesus could come and be with us today, it'd be very interesting to hear how much of is recorded in the Gospels he really said. Maybe he did say this. Again, I don't know. It's not my place to say he said it or he didn't say it. So here we are. God, guns, eternal damnation or unlimited compassion. All beings will be saved, no one left behind. This is an incredible tension going on in churches, going on in religions, going on across our country right now. Unitarians and Universalists were the early Christian radicals who rejected the notion of eternal torture. Now, we have moved on past being identified as Christian in particular. There are Christians who attend, but hardly anyone would call us a Christian denomination anymore. And the many mainline Christian denominations are now where the radicals used to be, and they reject notions of eternal torture. Yet the fundamentalists are also still strong and are slowly moving towards a religion of nationalism, as we see that starting to be proclaimed, Christian nationalism, tying violence to their religion, wanting to control others in many, many ways, pass laws to control others that don't agree with them, to make us a Christian nation. The lust for power has made some forms of Christianity unrecognizable to what it used to be. It's not a rosy picture, I admit. I'm not telling you something you don't already know. We must remain steadfast in caring for others, not embracing hate, standing for the rights of others, even if it's not our personal rights that are under attack at the moment. At least it's not me is a terrible foundation for a religion. May it never be our attitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I always, whenever I looked at it, I guess I just always looked at the positive of Jesus, and I always kind of thought of unconditional love, and then people would tell me, no, there's no unconditional love in the Bible. But anyway, we will end with our closing hymn, 414, for those of you who do not know it. And so Jancy's going to lead us off in singing.
Stand as we sing our closing hymn. Wait till our people find it. 414. Okay.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
Go in peace. We'll have about a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back for talk back